This is Breaking Through the Mayhem, the Site Lead podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, brand safety, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Welcome to the Site Lead's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. It's been a great day, right? Obviously, still energized knowing we have such an amazing guest right now who's going to be talking to us about some critical things that he's doing in the industry. Here at our company, we've been impressed with everything that you've done, and we're honored that you're joining us. And we're looking to have a great conversation with you today. So what we've been discussing is marketing in a time of constant shifting risk and opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. That's been our big topic today.
Right.
But with you, we'll riff a little bit and we'll go off topic, knowing that some of the questions we've been thinking about today are a little different when it comes to your world. But starting out, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are, and what keeps you going.
Yeah. So Neal Thurman from co-founder of the Brand Safety Institute, and it is really kind of an odd journey. So I have been friends with Mike Zanis, the CEO of the Trustworthy Accountability Group, for 20 odd years. And I was kind of running to the end of a federal services firm, not in digital in any meaningful way. He was getting a lot of conversation around, hey, how can TAG really expand its mission? They've been doing really well on fraud, and we've got all these other issues popping up. And it really wasn't, just wasn't in the cards for TAG to expand its mission. But he wanted to get some advice on, how do we create something for the industry that's more flexible, that can think about all these whack-a-mole issues that everybody's been talking about on stage as they come up. And so I helped him build a business plan to present to his board, for his TAG board, to say, hey, can we get your permission to form this other thing? And he gave me the expectation, this will probably take a fair amount of time to go through all the red tape and whatnot and get people bought in. About 2 months later, he came back and was like, everybody's in. They think it's a great idea. When do you start? And so all of a sudden,
jumped right in.
All of a sudden I went from, I'm not really sure what this industry is all about. And I enjoy talking about the issues with Mike. And I've been in digital. I started out my career post-grad school as a digital consultant. So I've had history in the industry, but had been out of it for a fair amount of time. And so it was just fascinating getting in and getting to know all the issues. And, I have done consulting, so, you don't get into that business unless you love learning new issues, you love learning new things. So that's what's getting me up, is like, hey, I'm a problem solver and want to find ways to apply those skills. And, being in a nonprofit as opposed to working for a company, I get to go tug on all these, capes of people who are doing fantastic things and say, hey, donate this little bit of it to the industry, and let's see if we can move something forward and kind of come up with collaborative solutions where, the industry is maybe lagging on, commercial-driven decisions.
Gotcha. So ultimately, when I kind of hear that, obviously for you, it's pretty important to help people learn.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I think you're an expert on that. So how would you recommend for vendors or brands or agencies to go out and learn what they may not know today that's out there? And then on top of that, obviously not to promote your own thing, but this has been a big week for you guys, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what's been so awesome for you about this week?
Well, so I think, and maybe I can answer both questions in kind of a similar way. So the most gratifying thing for me about this week has been seeing like the multiple years of partnership with Rob Rakowitz and GARM kind of coming together. The fact that we were able to jointly put together educational materials, both kind of at the masterclass level for people who are experts already in brand safety. We want to try and push them a little bit further. And then, kind of more a boot camp level thing this morning where, we were able to get people who are relatively new to the industry or kind of just coming into the brand safety and suitability side of things, and kind of get them closer to like, hey, I understand the breadth of the issues and kind of where the industry is now. And I think that has been incredibly rewarding to see that. Our hope is to to take what was a live session, which is obviously not very scalable, and now turn that into virtual education, and hopefully we can then offer that up.
To that point, do you find when you build out standards that sometimes it makes it harder for people to think outside of the box? Do you find that it creates a rigid perspective, or do you find that it helps people more comfortable? Where have you kind of seen that play out?
Well, so and we don't really. I don't feel comfortable thinking about us creating standards. I think our job is to try and look around the industry and find out where standards
Beautiful.
and just good practices are emerging, and try and get them in everybody's hands.
I love
so that. It is, Rob and Garm are creating the framework, and I think framework different than standards, meaning, hey, we all sit around tables and at conferences and talk about that we want to do better on these things, and being able to have just a common language for talking about it. We would never say you should buy this way, right? Every brand's going to have their own opinion on what that is and how that, kind of presents in the marketplace. But we can say, hey, here's a way of going through the conversation. And
Gotcha.
this is why when we started talking, I was so fascinated, because that's where you guys are investing
Yeah.
your time and your energy, is how do we help marketers have the conversation amongst themselves to say, who are we?
And I think what's so interesting as we go on these journeys together, the amount that I've personally gotten better or learned is crazy too.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I feel like what's lost is like when you actually start to have a lot of these conversations with each other, how much you learn too.
Oh, absolutely.
About life,
Yeah.
about people, about going forward, about getting better yourself. So I think ultimately there's a beauty in that, right? So as we start to invest more into the future, how do you think organizations, if you had your perspective, could come together and have more of these conversations, and how they could help the person who has their own bias not feel like they're feeling the need to feel like they're in a tough situation? So just curious how you think about those.
Well, so again, for me, and the reason that BSI turned out the way it did and kind of has taken the path that we've taken around education and building community and things like that, is you need someone at all levels of the supply chain to kind of have a common basis and a common language, because until you're speaking the same language, you're not going to have any of those hard conversations. Right. Yeah. If I'm a marketer and I say brand safety, like when we started this, and it was more about the word safety than suitability, a marketer meant, hey, what does my ad show up next to? Kind of that proto adjacency, your airline crash example that everybody kind of cited early on. But if I talked to the publishing side of the house, they're worried about viewability and how much my inventory is going to get, go away because, somebody viewed it as unsafe or unsuitable, or it didn't render properly, and I'm losing revenue. And so, you look at those two sides of the house, and they were not speaking the same language. And, then every step along the way to get you from point A to point B had their own little version of what that meant to them. And so I think, for us, starting that conversation and saying, we all first need to get together in our individual groups as parts of the supply chain and agree amongst ourselves. And then we need to start talking collaboratively. And so, the marketers need to have their own safe space to talk. Publishers need to have their own safe space to talk. And eventually we need to get them together and say...
How do individuals get that safe space to talk in this?
Well,
I think that's been something you're working on heavily, right?
Yeah.
You have an advisory board that you've built that allows individuals to have those conversations, which I actually think is even bigger than the brands and the agencies a lot of the time, because you're now allowing different humans from different places to have the conversations. I think it will take it even further, right?
So, and we want to do more of that, right? So when we get the marketers together, it's in that same kind of, closed door session. Hey, the marketers tend to want to talk about, hey, we're very resource constrained. There aren't a lot of us focused on this issue. Right. How can you help us focus our effort and time, whether it's with tools, with process, with, resources that can be common to the industry, and we can just adjust a little bit, whatever it is, that those are the conversations they're having. It isn't, and we're not talking at CMO level, right? We're talking about the people who are pushing the buttons and making the day-to-day decisions and that affect media buys.
That brings up a huge point. How do you then get those people to get the types of budgets and respect that they deserve within their organizations, right? That to me seems to be a critical topic.
I think at not to let everybody out there in podcast land in on the advisory board session, but you heard Lou Pascalis talk very passionately about how the journey happened for them at Bank of America, and that is crucial to it. That they were very fortunate that they crafted a business case and got resources before everybody was really talking about this. And that's always but what has fascinated me about Lou and Terry's journey together is that it hasn't been broadcast as well. Like, hey, here's the path. Like, here is the business case to take.
So
to
their
your CFO.
blueprint to you is a great way to educate others. And
absolutely.
So this brings up some, as we close in here, this brings up a big topic that's been brought up to me today that I didn't even think to ask until I started hearing this. How do we bring brands, agencies, and people together and then not create an inability to have a competitive advantage? I think it's been a big topic today, and it's been interesting.
Well, so this has been my theory since we started BSI and I started getting to know the industry. Everybody has come to all of these organizations, whether it be the APB, at the 4As, or whether it be here at Brand Safety Week or at ANA or any of the places that people gather and talk about these things. And they've always talked about brand safety and suitability as this very collaborative thing that we all need to work on together. And my commercial consulting entrepreneurial background is no, at some point, if this is important to everybody, you're going to start competing on it, right?
Correct.
I have a better path to an end result. And that result is valuable.
Can that result, because I'm better at it, drive something that moves a business forward, right? So I think ultimately that's where it's heading right now.
It is.
And I think you're doing a phenomenal job of trying to help everybody. If you were to close thinking about yourself, right?
Yep.
Who do you look up to today? Right? Who's helping you make some of your decisions outside of the BSI, outside of people that you talk to every day? Who are some of the people that you look up to?
It's funny. I don't know if I have a great answer for here's a person I look to. I think I tend to lean back on upbringing, my parent, just the example my parents set for me growing up, and other role models, probably too many to remember or think about along the way. That that's where you get your moral compass or North Star or whatever people want to call it, and trying to just remember back to that. What would my parents, I like the notion of, and social media has made this pretty real, if there was a newspaper story written about the dumbass decision you just made, how would you feel about that? And if you aren't sure what the answer is, maybe don't make that decision.
Yeah, it's like think before you tweet has always been one of the things. But it's a good point. Listen, we all have our own personal mentors. And that's amazing that your family meant that to you. Very similar in that, so thank God. But in terms of in closing, what would be your advice to anybody that's financially is struggling to join programs like yours? Well, which I'm not saying it's we're in it.
Right.
I'm not calling it overly expensive. I think it's very fair. But I just curious with the restraints right now and budgets and things, how could somebody learn without having to spend as much money?
Yeah, so we ultimately, we think that a lot of this should be shared as much as possible, and the way we're evolving our approach to content on our site and that we engage in, we want to try and have things. We have to keep the lights on, and so we have sponsors, we have membership, some membership fees and things like that. But we really have 3 levels of how we provide information to the industry or guidance to the industry. So there's plenty of stuff that's free, and it's a great way to get started, I think. In return for an email address and just having access to the audience that we care about, there's kind of a second level to unlock that's, we hope to maybe convert you into a paying customer member eventually. And then just to join as an individual is not, it's like $1,000, right? So if an individual wants to go through that, hopefully I
think you guys are extremely fair, as I said. I think you're actually even more than fair. So I think you guys are a great option for people to start learning and thinking. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Neal, for joining us.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks for having
if
me.
there's anything else you want to share, I'm open to it. Otherwise, thank you so much.
No, my pleasure. I really appreciate it and looking forward to our partnership.
Hi, I'm Joe, one of the producers for Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone that would make a great fit, you can fill out the form at sightly.com/podcast. We hope you have a great day.